Hello, I'm studying the word Chesed, kindness, Chesed. So let's get started. Let's start with some prayer. If you'll join me, please. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, Lord our God, everlasting King, who sets us apart by his establishments and established us on words of Torah. Amen, amen. Okay, so Chesed. Chesed, like I said, is the word kindness, okay? And as you can see, the Hebrew spelling is up above, and it ends with the letter Dalet. And we did a teaching. I did a teaching a few months back on the letter Dalet, and during that time we learned that Dalet means door. So just in a very simple form, simple thought, when you see the word Hesed, you can think, that we can either choose to open or to close the door to kindness, okay, that we show to others, but also that we're able to receive from others. Because sometimes, somebody wants to do something kind for you, something, charitable for you. And, sometimes, we hold back. So, like I said, we can choose to open that door to give kindness, but it's also to receive that kindness. Chesed. So the number is 2618 for the word. It means loving kindness, mercy, steadfast love, loyalty, faithfulness. And it's derived from the root hasad, okay, which conveys the idea of kindness or love. It denotes a deep, enduring love that is rooted in conventional faithfulness and mercy. And something that's very important about Hesed, it's not just an emotional response to, let's say, a need, okay? There's actually action that is behind Hesed, okay? There's action in showing that kindness, but there's also like making that commitment, okay, to show that kindness. And like I said before, to receive also, okay? So it's often pertaining to a relationship, okay, that kindness, and particularly that relationship is the kindness that God has shown his people, okay? It encompasses loyalty, kindness, mercy, reflecting God's unwavering love and faithfulness towards us. So we get to hear the word Chesed every week when we're doing the Amidah, right? Or every time we do the Amidah. So it says, the sentence says, Mehakel hayim behesed, mehayei metim berachamim, who sustains the living in kindness and revives the dead in mercy. So the Lord sustains us in kindness. So what does that mean? He sustains us in kindness. Well, it's like he's assisting. The word means like assisting or defending. He's like defending us in his kindness. He's helping us. He's nursing us like a mother to a child. He preserves us. He saves us, befriends, carry, comfort, favor, nourish, supply, supports. So the Lord sustains us in his kindness. If you can just interject each one of those words, he's providing that kindness to us by comforting us, by favoring us, by nourishing us, okay, and supplying all of our needs and supporting us, lifting us up when we need to be lifted up. So Hosea 6:6 says, for I desire goodness, Chesed. I desire Chesed, not sacrifice, devotion to God rather than burnt offerings. The temple service was bad. That's not what it's saying at all. More than anything, I want goodness. I want that person's heart to be full of kindness, lifting each other up. That's the important thing, that he wants in each and every one of us. So in Pirkei Avot 1:2, it says, Shimon the righteous said,
it didn't change on here.
hmm?
It didn't change. Okay, it changed now.
Shimon, Pirkei Avot 1:2, Shimon said, the world stands on three things: Torah, temple service, and acts of kindness. So the word there, it's Hasidim, it's Gemilut Hasidim, right? Acts of Hasidim. We hear of Hasidic Jews. Well, it's like the kindness. They are kind. They are trying to do a kindness to the world. So for all of us, we need to look at it as the world, as Shimon the righteous said, the world standing on three things: the Torah, we need that, we eat it, we read it constantly, okay? The temple services, we learn from the different things that were part of the temple service, right? And then our acts of Hasidim, our acts of kindness. That Gemilut Hasidim is part of repairing the world, okay? That we all feel, that God has called us to, to repair the world. Well, we do it with our acts of kindness. That is how doing kind things for one another. Proverbs 11:17 says, the man of kindness does good for himself, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. So a person that's doing kindness is doing actually something good for himself. Okay, let's examine that. So we talked about last week about how Joseph carried Jacob's body for burial, right? Kindness that Joseph did for Jacob, and it was a mitzvah, okay, for his dad's dying wish. As a result of the kindness, okay, he's doing this kindness for Jacob, not for himself. He's doing this for his father, right? But because of that kindness, it kind of gets, he was being blessed because of the kindness he was doing. So one greater than Joseph, Moses, carried Joseph's bones as a kindness, and for Joseph's dying wish, okay? So as a result, someone greater than Moses carried his bones and buried his body, and that was God himself. So it's like that kindness that you do, it just keeps, it goes on, it just goes on and on, that if you do something good, just know you'll be. It just may mean that something within you changes as you're doing those kindnesses, for someone else. So the most important thing is, when you're doing a kindness, you're not doing it for a personal benefit. Just like Joseph took his father's body to be buried, He didn't do it for himself. He did it for his father, to bless his father's dying wish, right? So God sees it though, and he remembers it. And therefore, the blessings that come from that will be from God because he's watching and he knows, what's going on. So, Yahushua, the rabbi of Shangnin said in the name of Rabbi Levi, and I placed my words in your mouth. This refers to the Torah. And with the shadow of my hand, I covered you. This refers to the act of loving kindness. This comes to teach you that anyone who occupies himself with Torah and acts of kindness merits to take shelter in the shadow of the Holy One. This is what is written. How precious is your kindness, O God, and the sons of man will take refuge in the shadow of your wings. To plant the heavens and to found the earth. This refers to the offerings, as it says, and to say to Zion, you are my people. Rab Huna Bar Papa said, we went over all of the scriptures and could not find anywhere that Israel was called Zion. Where did we find it? And to say to Zion, you are my people. So the shadow, being under the shadow of God's hand, is actually referring to the kindness, to a loving kindness, because it's God's shadow that is being cast on us, because we're being hidden under his shadow. And he's basically like a father. So this is really interesting. This is in Talmud Shabbat. Okay. Anyone who raises an evil dog within his home prevents kindness from entering into his home. Since poor people will hesitate to enter his house, as it is alluded to in the verse, to him that is afflicted, the word is lamas, okay? Kindness from his friends and awe of the Almighty will leave. Since in the Greek language, they call a dog lamas. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzhak said, one who keeps an evil dog in his home even divests himself of the fear of heaven, as it is stated at the end of the verse, and awe of the Almighty will leave. So, in a very simple, with a very simple little story, basically, so if you want to be able to show people kindness, you can't have an angry dog, they're barking, people would come to the home and be afraid to even come into the gate and, to spend time with you. So it's like, that person is preventing themselves from being able to show kindness and from others being able to show them kindness because of that angry dog. Okay, so stop and think of it in another way. Okay, let's say you don't have a pet, but let's say there's anger in the house. Let's say there's anger in the house. If there's anger in the house, that's preventing others from coming. If you're angry, that blocks off, being able to interact with people, whether they come to your house. In this case, it's pertaining to, somebody coming or entering into the house. So if you stop and think about it, it's that, you can't have that anger as a person if you want to be able to show kindness. You're preventing it from happening because it wards people off. It scares people off. So if you have that, that's why they call it a dog, because in the Greek language, the word lamas, it was the same as the word afflicted. Okay. The word lamas meant dog. So that's why they're saying this whole story about the dog. And yes, it's true. We've seen barking dogs and you're kind of scared to pass by that house, right? We usually cross the street if there's that barking dog, go across the street. Well, it's the same type of thing, like I said, for people. So basically, get rid of that anger, even within yourself or in the household, because you do not want, I should say, you do not want to prevent kindness from coming out of that home or coming into the home. Tosefta Peh says, King Munbaz gave away all of his treasures to the poor during the years of drought, and they complained, your ancestors of their fathers, and you went and gave away all your treasures and those of your fathers. He responded, my ancestors stored treasures below, but I stored treasures above, as it is written, truth will spring out of the earth, and righteousness, Tzedek, will look down from heaven. So this teaches us that there are storehouses in heaven. And I know we've talked about those storehouses before, at Shabbat services. So, but this teaches us about the storehouses in heaven, and our righteous good deeds are stored there. Okay. We may not see the blessing and even tzedakah from giving, charity, but we're going to see them in God's kingdom to come, because all of our acts are there, stored up, so that the Lord has, basically an account of those good deeds. And let's see. I was going to say something else, but that's okay. All right. So in Genesis 47:29, in Judaism, one of the highest forms, really the highest form of kindness, is shown to the dead, because it's completely selfless. The dead can't thank you, repay you, passionate and humane, to not expect anything in return. So this is Hesed Shel Emet, or true kindness, because the dead can't thank you. The dead can't say, oh, you know what? Because you did this kindness for me, I'll do this kindness for you. They can't do that. That's why it's such a big deal. It's such a kindness to go and pay your last respects at a funeral, because you are doing it solely for that person, and it could be also for those, the survivors. Okay. You're showing that compassion, but you're showing that respect and that kindness to the dead. So that is one of the highest forms of kindness. So I just think that's so beautiful, because it is totally selfless. So we have to look at Hesed as kindness, as eternal. And just like I was talking about the storehouses, we have to look at it as eternal, because what we do in this world affects the world, the kingdom to come. And like I said, the storehouses. But there's no small deed of kindness that's done that God doesn't see and recognize. And he records our kind deeds. And we talk about the books at Rosh Hashanah, like the book of life, of good, of the wicked, of the in between. We talk about, but in those records that God keeps, that's where our kind acts are stored, okay, or written down. So when we approach situations with Hesed, okay, God can use our actions as part of Tikkun Olam, okay, with the repairing of the world. We each have with us this burden to help others and repair the world together. The beauty of that is that we're all working to repair the material, the very fabric of love and unity among brothers and sisters in the world. So all of our acts of kindness are part of repairing, just repairing the world, repairing, and look at it as a fabric, kind of, little by little, you're sewing that fabric that's been torn, okay, by acts of kindness. And like I said, think about Rosh Hashanah and the books that are open during that time, and those things are recorded. Proverbs 16:6 says, iniquity is atoned by kindness shunned through fear of the Lord. Kindness is acted upon by our heart. We act in kindness not expecting a reward, but rather because we recognize a need. We recognize there's a need in that household, there's a need in that person, there's a need in an institution, there's a need. So you want to do a kindness, to help others. Okay. So we don't act to buy or try to bribe God by our acts of kindness. We're doing it out of our heart because we see a need. I see the need that person can't get to services unless I go and pick them up. Well, that act of kindness of going and driving that person around, that that should be a rewarding, in and of itself, because you have the blessing of recognizing that there is a need and God was able to use you, to fulfill that need for that person. So we can also perform an act of kindness by praying for each other. I'm always so blessed when somebody says, "Oh, I'm praying for you," or they send me a little note. "I'm praying for you and the family." That is such a blessing to me, because it is really a kindness, because that person is taking their time and really talking to God on your behalf. Just, Lord, help them in this situation. And it's straight from the heart. It's selfless. Sometimes we don't even know people are praying for us. So, it's just an act of kindness, really, when we're praying, because we're speaking to God for another. Excuse me. We stand and we ask God for his divine intervention, his insight, his direction. So praying for another is one of the greatest acts of Chesed. This act of Chesed is born out of love. The Sefer Yesodi HaTorah says the trait of compassion was implanted in man from the beginning of his creation. And it is the root of his love, his kindness, and his uprightness. It is that alone which leads us to the doing of good, not in order to receive a reward, neither naturally or unnaturally, neither in this world or in the world to come, for the trait of compassion is a reward in itself. For the compassionate one suffers in the suffering of his friend, and is not at peace until his friend's break is bound and his wound is healed. And that is a beautiful picture of prayer, of kindness, praying for someone, and it's like not letting go and just praying continuously for that person, just because you want the best for them, just because you want their wound to be healed, just because you want, a peace or a joy, to be part of their life or that situation that they're going through. So, oh wait, I'm sorry. I think there was one more thing. Oh yeah. So on this one, I also put down in Romans 12:15, and I didn't put it down here, but the scripture is, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. And that is part of the prayer. It's like that person's sad, they've lost somebody. So, you're praying for them and you're mourning with those who mourn. That's so the very last thing, Hesed. So at its root, it is one of the attributes of God, a kind, loving, faithful, merciful, compassionate God. Because we're made in the image of God, we also have within us that attribute of kindness. So, if you stop and think, okay, I'm made in the image of God. God is love. God is kind. God is and merciful. So all those things, should be so, it's like maybe next time instead of, reacting in anger or whatever, hey, I've got the attribute of kindness. Let me be kind. Let me be loving. Take that attitude that I'm made in the image of God. I can choose to have a different reaction, because that is in me. So Micah 6:8 says, He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to act justly, to love mercy, and the word there is hesed, and to walk humbly with your God. So hesed indicates that this attribute is not only a characteristic of God, but also a virtue to be cultivated by his people, by us. So Gimilut Hasidim, like I said, is usually translated as acts of loving kindness, but it is the repairing of the world. So Hesed, like many Hebrew words, does not translate exactly into English. And the word that's, I guess close would be kindness, but it's often translated as loving kindness. And Hesed means giving fully, right, with our acts and everything, but with love and compassion, but it's giving fully of ourselves. So, that goodness, that kindness within you, we can give that out and we can basically pass it on, because that kindness that we give to someone will be going on and on and on. And just remember, Hesed ends with a dalet. You can open or close that door to show that kindness. And that's all I have for this week. I hope you have a good week, and we'll see you on Shabbat.